What is going on, IB Nation? Welcome to another edition of IB Nation Sports Talk. I'm Vince D'Addario. That guy is Jesse Stiers, and we are here for a Thursday edition of IB Nation Sports Talk. And we are going to jump into some bold predictions. Brian and I were going to do our bold predictions last night. Technical difficulties, issues, whatnot. So I figured let's get Jess in on the fun, and let's hear what he has to say for some bold predictions. And just as a reminder to everybody, these are supposed to be fun. Like we're not necessarily predicting that these things are going to happen. It's supposed to be, a fun situation. Could they happen? Yeah, they could happen, but this is more like let's have a good time. Let's really think outside the box here a little bit and really stretch our thinking. So that's the plan. So we're going to go offense. We're going to go defense. And Jesse, I think, has a couple of special teams potentially as well. So we'll talk about that too. But let's get the niceties out of the way, Jess. How you doing today?
It is Thursday. Thursday's actually my favorite day of the week, believe it or not.
Really?
And I think this goes back to college because it was always the night that was like the most fun to go out, because once the weekends got here, there's always it felt like there was a more to do, in terms of
Sure.
like football and baseball and all of that stuff. So Thursday was usually the night to kind of have some fun. And I like it now too, because it's usually kind of like that pre-weekend type day. I have tomorrow off, so I even feel a little bit better about
nice.
today. So I got a 3-day weekend on my plate.
You know what tomorrow night is, Jesse? Going back to your Indiana roots.
Oh, is it high school football opening weekend?
It is week 1 of high school football. So I'm pretty fired up. The kid's going to get his first official varsity snaps. And I'm pretty pumped, man. It's going to be a good time. He was in for mop-up duty last year. That doesn't count. You know what I mean?
No, this is the real stuff.
This is starting. This is, he's got his starters and seniors dinner tonight, all of the above. And so, it's getting real, man. Tomorrow, under the lights. Well, it's Indiana.
What is this, junior year?
Yeah, junior year. So it's not super dark at 7:00 around here. It'll end under the lights, but it probably won't start under the lights.
Yeah, that was always my favorite transition. Is the start of the season into like those first couple, like it felt like fall games. It's not necessarily overly hot. Got a nice little, fall air. The lights are on a little bit sooner. That is what feels more like
couple weeks in, like conference play. That's where it really kind of hits home. So I'm pumped about tomorrow, but we've got bold predictions to talk about today, Jess. And so let's jump right into this. So offensively, I'm very interested to see where you go. Let me see, what do I have? I have 4. I have 4 bold predictions for offense. So I'm going to let you kick it off. Let's hear your first bold prediction, and then we'll kind of talk about it, and then I'll hit one. We'll talk about it, so on and so forth. So give me your first bold prediction offensively.
Yeah, so the first bold prediction I wanted to get into is Sam Hartman, right? So Sam Hartman is like the obvious, the biggest change in offense since last season, right? And a lot of people argue that Notre Dame hasn't had a quarterback like Sam Hartman in quite some time, right? Like we're all excited for Notre Dame to kind of open up that passing game, air the ball out a little bit. So I wanted to kind of look at, what those numbers might look like for Sam Hartman.
Specific. I like it.
Yeah. So last year, Drew Pine threw 22 touchdowns in 11 games. That's a nice even 2 touchdowns per game. I think Sam Hartman's going to be between that like 3 and 4 range for touchdowns per game, just depending on, kind of like game plan and obviously, what kind of production Audric Estime gets out of, those games. And so it's going to be like a give and take between those two. I think there's going to be a lot of touchdowns between the two of them. But I think some games you might see Sam Hartman with maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns, and other times you might see him with 2 or 3 touchdowns. And then Audric Estime's numbers will kind of mirror those as Sam Hartman's go down. His go up, and then as Hartman's go down, Audric Estime's go up. So long story short, I like Sam Hartman for 40 passing touchdowns in the regular season of 12 games, and that is an average of 3.33, so 3 1/3 every game. And again, I think that falls between what I was saying, between 3 and 4 passing touchdowns per game for Sam Hartman.
So 40 would be the most he's ever had in a season, I believe. I think it was at 38 was his high. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
in his career?
I think, again, you're going to see more of the touchdowns, but the yards aren't going to obviously be as much because he's just not going to be asked to throw the ball as much at Notre Dame. It's just not going to be, as a big chunk of their offense like it was at Wake Forest. But I still think, they get down into the red zone and stuff like that. He's going to be more of that guy who's precision with the ball, still dropping in touchdowns when they need him. So, and I think too, and that's just passing. I'm not even, I'm not even going to maybe account for a couple quarterback sneaks that might happen, or maybe a broken plays. But I'm going straight 40 passing touchdowns.
That's a lot. That is a lot of touchdowns. I think it's absolutely possible, but that's what makes it a bold prediction. I mean, I think that, this team is going to go as Sam Hartman goes. No doubt about that. Do you have more stats for him, or are you going to go a different direction, like for your next ones?
Yeah, I'm going to go the different direction for my next one. I wanted to stick to the passing touchdowns.
Perfect. So my first one, and this kind of goes right along with you. I mean, if your bold prediction comes true, then my bold prediction has a really good chance of coming true. And I have Sam Hartman winning the Heisman Trophy. So that's my bold prediction. Now, if we kind of predicted the season record last night, and I said 11-1, and Brian said 11-1, but he's like, I don't know where that loss is going to be. So like when we went through the schedule game
that's
by
where
game
I'm at too.
game,
I still don't know where that loss is going to be.
Right. We went through the schedule game by game, and he's like, they're going to win that one. They're going to win. He won them all. So they were like 12-0. Either way, if they're 11-1 or 12-0, Sam Hartman is a finalist in New York. I mean, that I think is very clear and very obvious, because he will be the most heralded player on a very, very good playoff team if that comes to fruition, right? And if he throws 40 touchdowns, he's got a really good chance of winning the whole thing, right? So depends on what other guys do. Caleb Williams isn't going to win a second one. They just won't allow that to happen. So he's not going to win a second one. So then you look at the other quarterbacks around the landscape. You've got Drake May at North Carolina. What kind of stats is he going to be able to put up? I don't think they're going to have the team wins to get him to New York, even though he's probably the best pro prospect out there. I just don't think he's going to have the team wins to get him there. Then you look at, Caleb Williams might have a chance to get back. Penix from Washington, Bo Nix, I guess, from Oregon. I do find it hilarious that Bo Nix was like, a turd on the side of the road when he was at Auburn, but now that he's at Oregon and had a pretty good year last year, all of a sudden he's, a Heisman contender. I think that's very
I'm not
interesting.
buying on the Bo Nix.
No, I'm not either. But I mean, those guys are all, I guess, contenders for this thing. And then there's always going to be some guy that we aren't talking about that has an amazing season that gets an invite and potentially could win the whole thing, right? So we'll see. We'll see what it looks like. But if Notre Dame does what we think Notre Dame will do, then Sam Hartman has a great chance of winning it because he'll be there. And it's Notre Dame. We're going to see how strong Notre Dame's brand is at that point. You know what I mean? Because Heisman voting is always very regional. And so what is it going to look like, when they reveal the votes and all of those different things? So, hey, if Notre Dame goes 11-1 or 12-0, he's definitely going to New York. So it's a bold prediction that he actually wins the award.
Okay. I like that. Do you want to get into? So I did a little bit of passing.
Okay.
Next one, I get into a little bit of rushing.
Okay.
I'm gonna go. Audric Estime and Jadarian Price will combine for 2,400 rushing yards on the season.
Okay, 2,400. That's a good chunk. So are both guys going over 1,000, or is one guy getting a huge trunk here?
Yeah. So actually, I think Audric Estime is going to be right around the 1,200 kind of range.
I think that's very, very doable.
maybe 1,300, and then I have Jadarian Price picking up the rest of it. So I said what, 2,400?
24. So that means he's gonna have 1,100 yards.
No, I take this back. I need to take it down. Just that's
bold,
a little bit
baby.
too bold.
That was
For
bold.
me. I'm gonna say they eclipse 2,000 combined, and I think that Audric Estime is a healthy 12 to 1,300. And then I think Jadarian Price will be that main kind of second back who still gets a respectable amount of yards, but I don't think he eclipses. I don't think he gets over like 800, and definitely not 1,000. So I feel more comfortable that they will. That Notre Dame's top two rushers, which would be Audric Estime and Jadarian Price, will eclipse 2,000 combined rushing yards.
I mean, last year Audric Estime had 920 and Logan Diggs had 821. So I mean, it's not far off from what happened
and
last
that's where
year.
I think Price isn't quite. It's hard to say. I don't think Price is maybe quite to where Diggs was at, but I think Estime is better than who Estime was last year. So it might end up that Estime gets. I wanted to take the leap and say Estime would be at 1,500 on his own, which is like 125 a game. And I just don't think that Notre Dame with their depth would put that kind of load on him. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like they would, instead of wearing him down, they'd allow it to get diluted and let other guys to get some more yards. But I definitely think I like estimating that, again, 1,200 to 1,300 range. And then Price to be in that kind of, 600, 700 range to get to the 2,000.
Yeah, I don't even. Here's the thing. I don't know how bold that is. Like, you were bold at 2,400, baby, but I don't know if you're bold at 2,000. You know what I mean?
Let's meet in the middle, 2,200.
Okay, now you're back in the bold category because it's going to be very interesting.
2,400 is too bold.
Yeah,
you'd almost need 2,000-yard rushers at that point,
and that's going to be tough because, look, could Estime and Price be that duo? Absolutely, but I think the room itself is going to allow for more guys to get carries. And so I think some of those carries are going to get diluted through, I think they're going to get diluted throughout some of the other guys, right? I think Jabron Payne is going to get carries. I think there's a chance that Jeremiah Love gets some carries. You know what I mean? So if the room wasn't as deep as it is, if it was just Jadarian Price, Audric Estime, and then like a couple guys, you know what I mean? 2,400 might not be off the table. I think you could have 2,000-yard rushers. You were really close to having 2,000-yard rushers last year, right? So, but I just feel like the room is almost too deep for you to have 2,000-yard rushers. So I'm on board with you at the 12 to 1,300 rank for Estime. It's what number 2 has. You know what I mean? And so if you say he's going to have 900, I think you're still in the bold category, but I think that's potentially reachable. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I'm on board. I like it. I like where your head's at, kid. All right. My next one is a team bold prediction. And I don't know. I think this has gotten more bold with the change in how the time is being kept, right? So the clock is going to run after first downs, and you might see a couple less possessions, maybe one less possession for each team. It's still unknown kind of how this thing is going to shake out, what this is going to do to scoring and all of that. But that magic number that we've talked about so many times for average scoring, I think they're going to score north of 40. I think they're going to be at 40 points a game or higher. Ooh. And is that a bold prediction? It didn't feel bold before, but now with the new clock rules, I feel like now it's trending in the bold category. You know what I mean? That also means they're going to have to put up points against the big three because they're not going to average 50-plus points against everybody else. And so they're going to have to put up points. And I think this offense can do it. I think this offense is going to be pretty prolific when it comes to scoring some points. I think the defense is going to score some points. And so I think they're going to be north of 40 this year offensively. So I don't know how bold it is per se, but a lot of people are like, they're never going to get that high because they're not going to get the ball enough. I think this could be a pretty quick strike offense if they want it to be.
So I just started looking at some numbers. Last year, they were about 32 points per game. The year before that, they were 35 points per game. So you start looking at, the Jack Cohn offense was, again, 35 points. And then last year, the Drew Pine And the sprinkle of
was
Tyler
rough.
Buckner offense was about 32 a game. I don't think you're off with 40 points a game, and again, I think that looking at Notre Dame's defense really helps your cause, because I feel like they're going to be good about, shutting other teams down and getting the offense back quickly. I don't necessarily care about, the pace of the offense and how quick they are about scoring. I just think their defense is going to be good enough to keep teams off the field and just continue to feed the offense and give it back to them, right? So you look at, again, Jack Cohn and that wide receiver room 2 years ago. Now you look at Sam Hartman combined with where their running game is at and the emergence of hopefully, a lot of young and electric wide receivers.
Right.
I like that 40 prediction. I do think it's bold. It's about an extra touchdown per game, off of last year. But I think, again, with adding someone like Sam Hartman, that is reasonable to add that you are expecting an extra touchdown per game.
All right. So I'm 40 points a game. You're rushing the ball like crazy. We're getting all kinds of points. That's fantastic. So what is your next offensive bold prediction, Jesse Stiers?
So the next one I looked at is, we've done a little bit of passing, a little bit of running. If we follow the trends, next up is some receiving. Who's gonna make these catches, right?
Okay.
So my bold prediction for the wide receiver room is that it'll be led by Tobias Merriweather and Jaden Greathouse, and those two guys will combine for over 800 receiving yards by the end of the season. And I don't know how that's going to break down. I think Jaden Greathouse is going to start out a little slower, but I think that those two guys actually both get close to 1,000 yards towards the end of the season and get to potentially that like 1,800 to 2,000 combined wide receiver yards. But what I've seen of Jaden Greathouse, and it's harder for me because I don't get to be around practice as much, but just seeing the clips and seeing like his body is so mature for a younger guy. He knows how to position himself. He knows how to use his body to get up and get passes. And it seems like, the biggest thing for me with these young guys is what limits them on the field is just not knowing where to line up, not knowing the playbook enough, not knowing, routes and how to check into certain things. That doesn't really seem to be the issue with Jaden Greathouse. And so I think it's going to take him a little bit of time at first to kind of, for the rest of, not the rest of the staff, but like just for him. Cause like, I just don't think a true freshman is going to be out there immediately, and getting a share of the wide receiver. But I think by like game 3 or 4, you're going to see him get more of those snaps and he's going to run with it. And I think you're going to end up seeing Tobias and Greathouse as the two top leading wide receivers in the wide receiver room. And I don't think they get to 2,000 combined yards, but I think they get very, very close to it.
So you think they're each going to have 800 yards? Is that what you're saying?
I do.
Okay. Oh, okay. I thought you said they were going to combine for 800, and I was like,
no,
really?
1,800. Sorry,
18. Okay.
1,800.
Okay. All right. So that makes it much more bold, which I dig. Okay, that is very bold actually. You're going 1,800 yards for combined for those two. That's a lot of yards.
For the sophomore and freshman duo, I think they're going to lead the wide receiver room in total. Like if you take their 2 yards and combine them together, they're going to be they would have the most out of any other pair amongst the wide receiver room.
That I can get on board with for sure. I think Thomas will have something to say about that. I think he's going to be kind of a go-to guy as well. But what I will say is, look, Jaden Greathouse is going to get playing time in game 1. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind about that. He's not going to start over Chris Tyree, and I don't think he's going to start over Chris Tyree all season, but he's going to get reps. He's going to be out there. He's going to get his, as the kids like to say, right? And so I 1,800 is a lot. 1,800 is a lot. At first, I thought you said 800, and I was like, that's not very bold. But 1,800 is a lot more bold there, Jesse Stiers. So, man, if they hit that, I guarantee you Sam Hartman wins the Heisman Trophy because he's got 2 studs that he's working with.
I think what's really going to you talked about the Tyree situation, and I think I think a lot of guys are going to get opportunities, and a lot of guys are going to get chances at catching the ball because Sam Hartman's throwing them the ball. But I think when it comes down to it, naturally as the season progresses, Sam Hartman, it's just going to show on tape that he just gets the ball to Greathouse. You know what I mean? Like that ball is just going to find him. And I think that is, you can't ultimately not play someone like that, right? Like you can't, a guy who's giving your quarterback the best opportunity, giving your team the best opportunity. I just think throughout this, as the season progresses, people are going to get more and more comfortable with, Greathouse, and he's going to be a really central kind of role down to the stretch of the end of the season.
I like where your head's at, man. You're thinking big offense. I'm on board. I'm on board with your big offense, man. All right, I guess that the ball is in my court, as they say. So I'm going to go back to the ground, and I'm going to talk about Audric Estime. And I didn't go yards on this one. I went with not total touchdowns, rushing touchdowns. And I think that he's going to, and I don't know how bold this is. Last year, he had 11 rushing touchdowns. I said he's going to have 15 plus. So my bold prediction is that he has 15 plus touchdowns. He's your short yardage guy, obviously. He's going to get the ball in the red zone. He's going to have a lot of opportunities. The question is going to be, are they going to hand it off or are they going to throw it? And if Sam Hartman has 40 touchdowns, I don't know how many are going to be left over for Audric Estime. I think they're going to score. I mean, like I said, I think the total scoring is going to be a lot, right? I think, you said 40 touchdowns. I said 40 points a game. I mean, there's going to be touchdowns for a lot of different guys in a lot of different ways. Can he go from 11 to 15 now that he's the bell cow? I think he absolutely can. Maybe that number is actually even a little bit low now that I'm thinking about it. The drop-off last year, though, was Estime with 11, and then it was Diggs with 4, Tyree with 3, Buckner had 4, Drew Pine had 2, and then Mitchell Evans had 1. So it was a pretty big drop-off after Audric. I think they're going to spread those out a little bit. So that's why I felt like 15 was a bold move, because I think there's going to be other guys in the backfield. They're going to have an opportunity to score some touchdowns.
Yeah, I like that. So, I mean, you get into what that turns into, 15 touchdowns. That's like a 1, and you got 3 left over for it. That's like 1 and 1.25 touchdowns per game. I think that's very doable. I just think, especially towards the end of the games, man, I just feel like Audric Estime is that finisher. He's that punisher. Oh, yeah. He's going to exert himself at the end of the game and really put those kind of nail in the coffin type touchdowns. So I could see him averaging closer to, maybe 2 touchdowns a game, maybe like a touchdown and a half per game. So we'll have to see.
Touchdown and a half per game would be what, 18 touchdowns if I'm doing my math right. You're the math guy, but I mean, it's definitely possible. It would not surprise me, because I think he is going to get a lot of the work, not only towards the end of games, but in general. I think he's going to get a lot of the work. And so he's going to have a lot of opportunities to score some touchdowns. Now, like I said, what's it look like when they're in the red zone? Is it Hartman to Merriweather, Hartman to Tyree, Hartman to Greathouse, or is it going to be handoff to Estime? That type of thing. So that's what we don't know, because we don't know how this offensive coordinator, Jared Parker, calls plays in the red zone. So we're all kind of taking a leap of faith here on what that's going to look like. So either way, I see touchdowns, and I see a lot of them. Your next bold prediction, sir.
Yeah, so I had one last bold prediction for the offense. I've done a little bit of Sam Hartman throwing touchdowns, a little bit of Audric Estime, and Jadarian Price rushing yards, and then some Tobias and Greathouse receiving yards. I'm going to end up here. I wanted to maybe look at like a team statistic like you did, with, points per game. Decided to stay away from that. I'm going to go to the offensive line, actually.
Ooh, okay.
And I looked up last year as part of my homework how many sacks they gave up. They gave up 21 sacks, which is just under 2 sacks per game. I think that I'm going to set the bar at 14 or under sacks this season. I think they cut out a third of the sacks this year. And I feel, because of that, I just feel really confident about their tackles. And I know they have young guards, but I think those guards will catch on quickly. I'm not really worried about Rocco Spindler too. His physicality. I don't see him really getting beat a lot, right? Like I see him maybe missing an assignment type situation that blows up a run play. I think that's more of, something that could happen to him. So I'm going to say 14 or under sacks for the season. I think also having Sam Hartman helps this too, because it's a guy, it's an experienced quarterback. He knows when to just chuck the ball. He knows when to, get rid of the ball. And I think that's something that's going to help them too.
Nice. I like that. I like that a lot. I think I really like this offensive line, at least the way I think it's going to end up looking. And I think that they are going to protect Sam Hartman. And I think that Sam Hartman is smart enough in the pocket where he should be able to avoid sacks. Like, he's not going to be right up on top of the line of scrimmage like he was, at Wake Forest. He's going to feel like he has all day to throw the ball. I just have a feeling that that's what it's going to look like. And I also feel like teams aren't going to be able to put as much pressure on him when he's dropping back, because he's going to make them pay early on in the season. And so they're going to have to drop back into coverage, which is like, pick your poison. Okay, do we drop back in coverage to try to defend the pass and allow Audric Estime to run us over? Or do we load the box, potentially put some pressure, and just let Hartman throw over the top? Yeah, this offense is going to be balanced. This offense is going to be very, very balanced. And I think sacks are going to go down because he's a sixth-year senior who understands pressure, and the offensive line that he's going to be playing behind is light years better than anything he played behind at Wake Forest. I mean, it's not even the same stratosphere of what he played behind at Wake Forest. So I think he's really going to enjoy himself back there, like make himself a picnic, just really have a nice time back there throwing the football. So I like that one. I like that team stat. I would, you could even like shorten it up even more, and I think you might even still be in the ballpark.
You going with the 10 range?
I think that would be the number that sticks out in my head, but yeah. I mean, 10 is what, like 0.85 sacks a game. So you give up a sack a game, and then one game you don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could definitely see that being the case. But we'll see. We shall see. I like it. But I like where your head's at very much. All right. I know you can see what my bold predictions are, and so I am changing it just a skosh. And I'm changing it. I had to do one for Chris Tyree. Okay. And I also want to be very clear that I'm not talking about special teams here. I'm talking about offense only. Okay. I have that Tyree is going to average 5 touches per game. Okay. In full disclosure, I had 6 receptions per game, and that's just way too many. That's 72 catches on the year. That's way too many. And then I adjusted it to touches, and then I went to 5. So I did bring it back to reality a little bit, but he's going to get a lot of catches underneath. He's going to be a safety valve for Sam Hartman. He's also going to be a take the top off the defense guy. And I think they're going to let him run the ball a little bit. Some end arounds, some reverses. I think they're going to get him involved in the offense in a creative way. So 5 still might be large, but I feel like, if they throw the ball to him 1 time per quarter and he catches it, and then they hand the ball off to him 1 time per game, that's 5. I think that's doable. And I think this offense is going to make a point to get the ball in number 2's hands. And so I'm going a little out on a limb here with my guy, Chris Tyree, but I think he has 5 touches a game, not including special teams.
Okay. I like that. I won't lie. When I saw the 6 catches per game, I did do the times 12, and I was like, ooh, that's capital BOLD.
So brought it back.
I like that. I like that amendment though, because I do think that there will be, like Vince, as like a lot of these offensive coordinators do have a considered effort of, we want to get the ball to this guy, touches X amount of times per game. So there's definitely going to be some sort of effort for a lot of the plays you were talking about. Maybe it's like some jet sweeps, or guy goes in motion and Tyree just takes the ball, Hartman snaps it and hands it off right behind him, and Tyree's flying around the corner. Or maybe it's literally just a wide receiver screen, or maybe it's just an underneath route. That's the thing about Chris Tyree. His versatility allows for a stat like touches, because there's going to be a way for him to get the ball. So I really like that one.
Yeah, I think he's going to be dynamic. I think he becomes a household name. You know what I mean? I think he's kind of the forgotten man. He was a household name last year because we're like, why is he not touching the ball? Like, why
Yeah.
is he not hitting the ball? So he became a household name over here at Irish Breakdown. But I think he's going to become a household name for all the right reasons this year. And if practice is any indication, they're going to get Chris Tyree the football. And so I'm pretty pumped up about that. All right, Jess, let's talk about some defense. Okay, let's talk a little defense here. We both made some bold predictions for defense. I have 3 here. How many do you have?
I did 4 again. I keep it
Nice.
consistent.
I like it. I like it. So you can lead us off again because you'll lead us off and bring us home, and then I'll do the ones like in the middle. We'll go back and forth. We'll snake it through. But defense is going to be very interesting because I'm curious to see where you went with some of these. I did 2 individual and 1 team.
I'm just gonna get it cracking right off the bat here.
All right. What do you got?
Team leader in interceptions will be none other than Cam Hart. I believe that he is, maybe this isn't bold, maybe it's not bold, but I think that Benjamin Morrison had his year and now the hype is around him. I still think Benjamin Morrison can be a very solid corner, but
Absolutely.
Me, myself, I'm not throwing at the guy who everyone tested last year. I think Cam Hart's going to get more of those kind of targets by game plan. And I think Cam Hart is just going to ultimately step up, right? Like, I just think that he's going to take that challenge on and just make more plays. And so I just think, again, with less of the targets going towards Morrison and headed towards Cam Hart, and then Cam Hart's, in my prediction, elevated play this season, I think he's going to be the leading interception getter in the secondary this season.
Well, I mean, look, I'm a card carrying member of the Cam Hart Adoration Foundation, and so I'm all about this bold prediction. And I don't think it's all that bold because I think you're right. I think that, and I'm being a little sarcastic because a lot of people have forgotten about Cam Hart because he's been on the team for a long time. He's battled some injuries and things like that, but man, has he looked good in practice. I mean, he is.
I mean, there's a reason why he's a captain too this year, and I think that carries a lot of weight as well.
No, you're absolutely right, and I mean, he is built like an NFL corner.
Yes.
I mean, bottom line,
lanky but strong, like a wiry strong.
Yeah, 6'2.5", 207 pounds, and he's all of it. You know what I mean? And he can move, and I mean, he looks the part. He looks the part, and if he can stay away from the injury bug, which is the big if. I mean, I'll be honest, it's a big if. But if he can stay away from the injury bug, you're right. Nobody's going to go towards Benjamin Morrison. They're just not. And they're going to learn really quickly that they can't go to number 5 either.
Right.
And I have it on good authority that one of the reasons that Cam Hart came back this season to Notre Dame was because of how well Benjamin Morrison played last year. And he's like, people are going to try to throw at me. He's like, I'm going to raise my stock by coming back to Notre Dame and balling out. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. And so I love this prediction by you. I absolutely love it. I think Cam Hart's going to have a heck of a season, and I can't wait for it. I really can't wait for it. It's going to be great. That's a good one. It's a very good one. All right. My first defensive bold prediction, I'm going to the linebacker level, and I know the chat is going to love this one because this young man is a favorite in the chat, and it's not close. He may be the most popular guy in this chat. Jalen Sneed. Jalen Sneed will lead the team in sacks. How's that for bold for you? He's not even a starter on this defense, and I have him leading the team in sacks. Now, there's a reason for that. There is some logic behind this particular pick. He's going to be the linebacker in the dime on third downs, things like that. He's going to be in there. And what are they going to do? Just like they did with our boy Bo when he was in this package, they're going to trigger him. He's going to be coming off the edge. He's going to be coming up the middle. He's going to be coming after quarterbacks. He's going to get some sacks, folks. I'm telling you, he's going to get some sacks. Now,
not only that, but they like to bring those, we've seen them before kind of bring those safety and corner pressures off the edge too.
Right.
And the only reason you really bring those, Vince, is because of one, the surprise element, and two, really just the speed on how fast those guys will get on the quarterback. And that's what Jalen Sneed provides off the edge, is just speed that is on you now. And so I think there's just going to be a decent amount of plays, like you said, designed around the fact of Jalen Sneed and his skill sets, right? Because is he a first and second down linebacker in a more traditional defense? Probably not right now. But again, when you get into those second and third, maybe long down situations, and we've talked about it before, that's the luxury of this defense, is they just have so many pieces that they can really use to their advantage. And I think that is the Jalen Sneed advantage, is creating pressure with him off the edge.
Well, and he's at a stage in his career, he's not ready to sit there and diagnose and do all of the things that like JD Bertrand is going to be really good at this year, right? He's just not ready for that. But what he is ready for is to be exploited from an athletic standpoint. And I know you're reading We Are Not Marshall, aren't you? You can do things defensively to use him to your advantage right now, just as a freak athlete, which he is. And when he's triggered and he's coming downhill and he just knows for the football, Jalen Sneed is really freaking good, right? It's when he really has to overthink things and he has to diagnose, because he's just not ready for that yet, is when he struggles, right? And so I'm telling you, they're going to send him. They're going to send him. He's going to be around the quarterback, and he's going to be doing some good things. So I say he leads the team in sacks. Part of this is also because I think the defensive line is going to be really deep, and I think some of the sack totals are going to be spread out between all of them. I don't think there's going to be one guy that just dominates the sack total. So Jalen Sneed, baby. So everybody better be excited when he gets his first sack. It won't be next Saturday, by the way, because I don't see Navy dropping back a whole lot. But it will be against Tennessee State, folks. So mark my words. It's coming. All right, Jess, what's your second one?
So give me one. I had what I was gonna do, and then I started to kind of maybe potentially tinker with it, because I think you brought up a good point, but I'm going to stick with it. I was going to look at their sack totals from last year and make a prediction off of that. I am going to scrap that and go back to my original plan. And I think you brought up a good point here, is I think the sacks are going to be dispersed amongst many of players. And so I don't think you're going to see someone with like a crooked number up there, right? I think you're going to consistently see a few guys at a respectable or pretty solid number. But I like the game in which you've started here, is who's going to be the sack leader. And I think that overall it is going to be Junior Tuihalamaka. And I've said this before. I'm big on him this season and a breakout role. And between the fact that I don't see the defensive end and Viper positions as something that's like completely locked down. I know they have some ones in there, right? But like Jordan Botelho has always been inconsistent and I just think that, again, Junior is going to be a guy who takes advantage of the situation. I don't think he's going to have, again, some crazy crooked number, but I just think he's going to. And the reason why I like him so much is because, again, he's moving down from linebacker to defensive end, and I like his speed off the edge. And another thing that proves to me is, in their dime and nickel packages, he works down as like a nose tackle guy. So he's got the strength to be a defensive lineman.
Sure.
You combine that with his speed, and just really, it's going to be a much easier game from him. His responsibilities are dwindling down from linebacker position, and I just think it'll allow him just to, again, play more free off the edge. And I love his speed, and I just think this is his breakout season. And so I think he steps up and leads the team with maybe like 6 or 7 sacks or something. Nothing crazy. I don't think double digit, but I think he gets maybe a half a sack per game.
Okay. I like it. I look, if they can get pressure off the edge on a consistent basis, then this team's going to be very, very good. They're going to be tough to stop. So I like it. I like where you're thinking. All right. And he's going to get a lot of playing time. He's the second guy to come in at that position. And behind Jordan Botelho, I think Jordan Botelho is going to put up good numbers as well. And so, I mean, if the backup at that position, at that edge position is the guy leading the team in sacks, that bodes well for this team. That's for sure. All right. My next one is an individual again. I'm going back to the secondary. I'm going to the other guy who I'm a card-carrying member of his foundation, and that's Xavier Watts. And anybody that has listened to any shows that I've been a part of knows that I'm big on Xavier Watts, and I'm even bigger on the season that he's going to have this year. And so I am predicting that Xavier Watts is going to be an All-American this year. Now, not necessarily saying first team All-American.
Yeah, there's levels to All-American.
There's levels, so I'm kind of hedging my bet a little bit. But I do think he is going to get some All-American nods. I really, really do. I think that all of the reasons that you brought up as to why they're not going to throw at Benjamin Morrison, I think they're going to end up not throwing at Cam Hart a whole lot either. And I think Xavier Watts is going to have an opportunity to really make some noise with his stats. I think he's going to come down with interceptions. I think he could very easily lead the team in interceptions this year. Maybe that's a bold prediction, maybe it's not, but I think that will lead to some big plays by Xavier Watts. And look, I said it years ago. I think he is dynamic with the football in his hands as an offensive player. So if he's going to get a pick or two or three or four, the ball's in his hands, look out, because he's going to make some people miss. And offensive guys don't like to make tackles. And I think Xavier Watts can make some noise when he's got the football in his hands after a pick. So I think that Xavier Watts is going to be an All-American, man. And I think it's going to really strengthen this secondary. We know the corners are really good. I think Xavier Watts is really, really good. If he's an All-American and then he just brings along whoever's standing next to him back there at safety, he just brings them along with him, then this secondary is going to be really, really good.
Okay, I can get down with that.
All right.
I have. You know what? Let me finish that thought up a little bit more. I think that Notre Dame secondary is so good, and I have not so good, but I think they have the potential to. They have a lot of really good pieces and the potential to be a really solid unit. There's going to be an All-American out of that group. I just don't know who it's quite going to be. So I think the fun of it is kind of, who is it going to be, right? Because I think I could see Cam Hart as one. I could see Xavier Watts as one. I could see Benjamin Morrison as one. I could see two guys being All-American. You know what I mean? There's going to be some really good players in that secondary. So I'm curious to see, when the season shakes out, kind of who ends up with some of those accolades. But
all right, what do you got?
To go into my next one, I've done sacks. I've done interceptions. Now it's time to go to that kind of intermediate level, the linebacker play. And I'm going to get into some tackles, and I'm going to go out and say my bold prediction in terms of tackling. J.D. Bertrand will be top 5 in total tackles by the end of the season.
In the country?
In the country.
Ooh, okay.
So let me back this up a little bit.
Yeah, please do.
J.D. Bertrand last year had 82 total tackles, but we know he kind of missed some games with some injuries and targeting. And of course, the game that he sat out with injury was the Navy game. So that's a
big one. That's double-digit tackles.
Yeah,
right
that's famine and feast in there. So
right.
And then you look at the year before, 2021, he had about 102 tackles.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, the number 5 leading tackler in the country was at 137. I think that J.D. Bertrand gets to right around 130, and I think that might get him in the top 5. Again, I think he's going to be elevated from 2 years ago where he had, just over 100 tackles. And if you really think about it, 130 tackles is just over, that's like, 10, 11 tackles per game. I don't think that's too far out there considering, what he's looked like in camp. He looks like he's moving faster. He looks a step quicker. That bodes well to, more tackles. And for a defense that is kind of funneled around, the linebackers making a lot of tackles, I just think he's going to be that guy. So he's going to be a top 5 tackler in the country by the time the season is over.
That is bold. There's no doubt about that, because I'm looking at the stats, from last season, like you said, and there's not a lot of big name schools at the top of the tackling.
No, isn't that kind of funny too?
Yeah, you got Old Dominion, Buffalo, North Carolina, UConn, North Texas, Cincinnati, Troy, Miami of Ohio. that seems to be where the tackles come to feast, I guess. The first, I guess, big time. I mean, North Carolina's Power 5, obviously, and they had a kid who is third in the nation.
I'd say Iowa at number 12 is probably the most respectable. 125, Jack
Agreed.
Campbell.
Yep, absolutely. So interesting. Very, very interesting. I like that. That might be your boldest one yet, actually. So good for you, Jesse Stiers.
Thank you.
I like that.
And I feel like that one's not like too crazy of a bold one, right? It's not like saying Sam Hartman's gonna have 5,000 passing yards or something like that. Like, it's bold,
right?
But it's not like unattainably bold.
I think it's good because I think JD Bertrand's going to have a breakout season. I do, and I've said
that's what
before.
I mean. Just knowing that it's his second year in the defense, knowing where he is or at a linebacker, personally what he did in the offseason to study tape, like he's just taken it to that next level, and I just think his game is really going to reflect that. I think 120 tackles is easy this year. I think it again, he's going to get to. Can he get to that 130 range? I think it'll come down to those last couple games.
Right. No, absolutely. I love it. I think he's going to get to triple digits for sure.
I want to answer this "we are not Marshall" question towards the bottom of here.
This one.
Any concerns of his durability playing many snaps? The guy is consistently playing hurt. We are not Marshall. I am going to be honest with you. Every linebacker is probably playing with some sort of injury by the time halfway through the season comes to. Like, the linebacker's job is to literally hit someone every play. So, it's just a matter of time before something starts feeling off. You just kind of play through it, and let the game kind of take over. You stop feeling it. But after the game, that's really when it sets in.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I can imagine for sure. All right. My final defensive bold statement is a team one. All right. And I was looking for a team one that I really wanted to go at. Was it going to be scoring, total tackles, team sacks, whatever. One of the things that this team did not do well last year, especially early on in the season, create turnovers. And I think that is going to change this year. I think they've got a handle on what this defense is supposed to be. I think they're going to be able to flow around to the football a little bit more freely. I think the secondary is really, really good. I think they're going to ball hawk like crazy. And so I have them at, 25 plus. So 25 or more turnovers that the defense will create. Now, to put that into perspective, into context, right? We always want to do that. When you look at total turnovers gained, 25 would put them in the top 10, basically. Ohio, Georgia State, Western Michigan all had 25 last year. Then there was a group of guys at 26. That would include Troy, Buffalo, Penn State, and Duke. And then USC had 28. Marshall had 29. Louisville had 30, as well as Middle Tennessee. Illinois had 31, and Western Kentucky had 32. So 25 isn't going to lead the nation, but it's going to get them in the top 10. Yeah. And if this defense can turn the ball over and get the ball to the offense, then all of our offensive stuff that we were talking about has a better chance of coming true. So I think they're going to do a much better job of turning other teams over this year.
Isn't that a fun game you get into? You're like, well, I've already made this bold prediction. So what other bold prediction can I use to set up my other bold prediction? Because without it, it's not coming true.
Yeah, exactly. No, absolutely. So I think this team is going to do a much better job of turning other teams over for sure. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. What do you got? What's your last one?
Yeah, so I've gotten into interceptions. I've gotten into total tackles, a little bit of sack action. I need to go to a team stat myself here to wrap it up a little bit. And I want to address, I think Notre Dame's biggest criticism last year on defense, not stopping teams when they needed to, and also not shutting down the run game. Also, I felt like those were kind of two criticisms of Notre Dame. Last season, they gave up on average 131 yards per game. I'm going to set that over under at 100, and I think they're going to average less than 100 yards per game on the ground this year. Last year, only 10 teams did that, and I think that realistically that is going to be the case just because of, again, I believe in their depth at the defensive line. I believe in their linebackers of JD Bertrand and Kaiser. and kind of who they're going to mix match in there around them, depending on down and distance, etc. But I think they're really going to shut down the run game this season. I think it's going to be, again, they're going to give up less than 100 yards per game on the ground.
Because last year they were ranked 37th in the country at run defense. Georgia was number 1 at 77 yards a game, which is ridiculous, by the way. I don't know how that even took place, but 77 yards per game. No one was really even near them. James Madison, was at 80. Navy was at 88.92. Marshall 93, South Alabama 93, et cetera, et cetera. So that would put them in the top 10 if this was last year, which if Notre Dame's defense can be in the top 10 when it comes to rushing defense, holy cow, man. Like,
it's going to be led by the fighting JD Bertrands making 150 tackles.
Yes, it is. I think that's going to be awesome. That's going to be a lot of fun. Holy moly. He's going to be snot bubbling running backs all season long. If that's the case, that's a bold prediction, baby, but I like it. I like it a lot. And dropping your average 30 yards is a good chunk. But like you said, I think a lot of those yards came late in the game when Notre Dame needed to shut teams down and they let them have that one long drive or whatever. And it just felt like a lot of it was on the ground. So it's possible. It's definitely possible. So, but they're going to have that prediction. We're going to know whether that's possible or completely not possible at all after the Navy game.
That's true.
Use the stats a little bit,
right? Because that's a hard one because like not every team has to play Navy, and Navy's obviously offense is like, oh, I should have had an amendment in there that Navy doesn't count because of that reason. You know what I mean? Because it's like when a team has 300 yards of offense and they're only trying to pass the ball twice, like it's like, yeah, well, it's still respectable because it's still, they're only 300 in total offense, but when all of it's on the ground, that really skews the run average number.
Yeah, no, it's gonna, but still 131 included Navy, right? So you're still in the neighborhood. You're still in the neighborhood. I like it. Now, you came up with a couple special teams ones. I did not. So I'm gonna turn the ball over to you for special teams. I mean, there's some things I had in my head, like, over under 1.5, like return touchdowns, because they really haven't done that a whole lot in recent history. And we know how electric the Chris Tyree one was. So here's my bold prediction. I'm taking the over 1.5 return touchdowns this year.
Vince, that's not even bold enough. I went with 4 special teams touchdowns this season.
You got it, buddy. You take it. Take it.
I went with not even special teams. I'm going like return touchdowns between punts and kickoff returns.
Okay.
I think they sneak 4 of them boys in there this season. And the only reason I am so high on this is because Marcus Freeman obviously has bought into special teams, and he allows his special team coordinator the resources needed in order to be a successful special teams unit. And then we got into it, I think last week, or maybe it was earlier this week. It's all kind of blending together of who are the guys that have been back there. Chris Tyree, Jadarian Price, Devin Ford, I think has been back there. I just think there's a lot of playmakers back there, Vince.
Sure.
And I think that's a lot of explosion and just dynamic players back there. And I think that you're going to see maybe, 2, I think you're going to see kind of 2 of each, two kick returns snuck back, and then 2 punts snuck back. So that's kind of where I was thinking of the 4, but I'm going to go with 4 return touchdowns by the punt and kick return teams this season.
That might be your boldest one yet. That's because what have they done in the past? What have they done in the last few years?
I didn't even look. I just
not
felt
much.
It. Just felt it.
I think the answer is not much. I don't think that they had the one obviously against Wisconsin, which was massive, obviously at the time. But I don't know that they've had one since then off the top of my head. Maybe the chat can help me out because I'm terrible with stats. But 4 would be crazy. It would be unbelievably awesome if that was the case. So, but I agree with you that they're going to have a ton of talent back there, though. A ton of talent.
I think that their block punts naturally go down, and the uptick will be seen in those receiving and return punt and kick return touchdowns.
Okay.
Last one for me,
All
special
right.
teams. I think that we have a field goal kicker
Mm-hmm.
who is above 85% in terms of field goal percentage.
Okay. So what does
So
that quantify as? Give me like a out of what is that out of if he kicks 20 field goals, that means he's gonna hit 17?
yeah, 17 would be correct. So he'd be missing 3 for every 20. I think that's where it's going to be. I think we're going to have one of the more efficient field goal units in the country. And the reason why I think this matters is because there's a lot of talk about the big 3 games this season. I guarantee you, Vince, one of those games comes down to a field goal. One of those games comes down to a field goal. So I believe that, he stays above that 85 field goal percentage by the end of the season. And I think he hits a 50+ yarder as well. I'll throw that in. I'll sprinkle that in as a little bonus, a little extra credit. I think he's above 85%, and that he at least makes one over 50 yards this season.
So let's see here. 85% would put him in the top 30, essentially, for all of kickers. So you want to amend it to a little higher, or are you good with 85?
I was thinking 90%, but I didn't do enough of a background on that. So
90 would be top 13 in the country.
Let's take it. That feels more bold and elite, in my opinion. So let's go 90%. And you know what? I'll go at least 2 field goals over 50 yards. That's how confident I am now.
There we go. Now I like where you're at. Now I like it. Now I can get on board with your special teams talk, pal. Okay. So 2 over 50 yards and 90%. I think any Notre Dame fan or any fan of any team would absolutely 100% take that. As long as the two that they missed or the 2 that he missed weren't like to win the game against Clemson or Ohio State or something, like that would be terrible.
I'm telling you, one of the games is coming down to a field goal. Either, us kicking the last second field goal or them kicking the last second field goal.
You're not wrong. But I do think just seeing Spencer Schrader, hearing him talk, watching him work.
He's got the leg.
He's got the leg. I think he's got the mentality. He's a former soccer player. Like he was a PK kind of guy. Like I think he's built for the big moment. And if he's going to miss one, I think it's going to be in a situation where it doesn't matter a whole lot. Like it always
He's
matters.
The type of guy where he gets better when the pressure's on.
100%.
He locks in 100%. A little bit more.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So we'll see how it looks in a game, but I think you're right on the money here. I think that would be great. 90%, 250 plus. I'm gonna write that one down. I think that's a definite possibility.
I think that we should go back and write all of this down. We'll have to re-listen to this show. Yeah. And
I think we should.
I think we've done a lot of these kind of things, these segments of kind of like, like we did the draft of the teams, and then we did some bold predictions, and then we talked about what freshmen are gonna have impacts. It's like someone needs to be an IB, just
like a scribe.
Just keeping track.
Historian.
Everyone's got their own little notebook, and daily they write down in Vince's notebook his outlandish, boldish pick of the day.
You need to be involved in our game predictions this year.
That seemed fun. Fun.
Yeah, you need to be involved with that because we're all usually chasing Brian. Because he is the master when it comes to watching college football. I mean, he watches like every game possible. And so he knows these teams left and right. And I think you need to be involved. I think you do. So
usually on Saturdays, I can just only get away with one game, that 1 4-hour windows.
And it's usually the Notre Dame game. So
yeah, I pick and choose my battles wisely.
And then usually like the post-game show, I've got my iPad like right here, like watching whatever the night game is, kind of like an on the side kind of a deal, so that's pretty much where I'm at when it comes to watching college football. But all right, that's going to do it for our what, you got something?
No.
Or are you just pointing? Okay. Yeah, that's going to do it for our bold prediction segment of the show. Make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review, all that fun stuff, because it's important, and we appreciate everybody that's in here, and thanks for hanging out. Now it's time. You know what time it is, Jesse.
It's my favorite time of the day.
It's rapid fire time. And so we're going to jump right into rapid fire here. And I think we got some good ones here, kind of all over the map. to be honest with you, in rapid fire this evening. And so we'll see how this thing goes. Whenever I do a show with Jesse, we got to talk Cubs. And I'm sorry.
Especially after last night.
Yeah, 100%. I thought they were going to blow another game to the White Sox, the lowly White Sox. And then
Vince, I was so hot that whole game. I was like, there's no reason.
For good reason.
I was like, there's no reason that we should split this regular season series with them, especially after taking the first two. I conceded, what happened 2 days ago. And I was like, all right, well, just get this one back. All of it kind of goes away. And I was just sitting here mad all night. Just no hits. So,
I mean, just getting dominated on the mound by a guy with a man bun. Like that didn't work well for me. I'm sorry for the man bun people out there, but that bothered me a lot. And they just could not hit the ball. I mean, it was embarrassing how they couldn't hit the ball. And then just Madrigal hit. They were
that pinch hit home run was in. That turned it all. Well, actually, Fulmer came into the game in the 8th with the bases loaded and no one out, and then he struck out the side. Madrigal leads off the next inning with a pinch hit bomb, and then obviously we know the next inning Morel hits a 3-run walk-off. It was just like those last 2 innings made up for like all of the first 7 innings.
Man, I'll tell you. So we got a Cubs question to lead things off. So the Cubs just finished a series with the White Sox. Now they host the Royals, travel to the Tigers and Pirates, and then they're back home to face the Brewers to close out the month. Okay? Here's the Brewers' schedule. They're in first place right now. They're 2.5 games up on the Cubs. They're closing out a series at the Dodgers. They've already lost the first 2. Game 3 is tonight. They go to Texas to face the Rangers. Then they got a homestand with the Twins and the Padres. Then they obviously close out the month at the Cubs. So, scale of 1 to 10, the chances that the Cubs are in first place when the calendar turns to September.
So I looked at this, both teams are basically going on, a 9-game stretch before playing each other. The Royals, Tigers, and Pirates for the Cubs. I think the Cubs sneak out of that series or those series at like 6-3, maybe 7-2. I think they win the series with all of them, right? Like take 2 of 3. So that gets me a solid 6-3 at the end of it. And then I think after that, the Brewers in that same same stretch of time, they are going to go Texas, the Twins, and the Padres. I think they end up somewhere around like 4-5 in that area. So that would put the Cubs about a half game back before the Brewers series. And I think again the Cubs take 2 of 3 from the Brewers in that series. So I give this a solid like 8 or 9 out of 10 that they are. If they're not in first place, that gap is like a 1-game window by the time the end of the month comes. So I feel very fortunate about this. I was actually looking at the schedule the other day, and my buddy texted me. He's like, man, we got to stretch against the White Sox, the Royals, the Tigers, and the Pirates.
Yeah.
It's time to like feast, right?
This is the time.
And that's why I think that White Sox loss made me mad the other day too. So I was like, you guys need, like, this is a big stretch to get off on a good foot on. And they just started with losing to the crappy White Sox. So yeah, I'm going to give this again a solid 8 or 9 out of 10, just because of the disparity of the schedule. Like the Padres are a hard team. They had, good pitching and they've underachieved this year, but that lineup is just ready to pop at any point. Some good pitching. And then Texas is just, the Rangers are what, and playing at Texas, I think that's just really hard too. So I just think with their matchup and then getting to play each other again, after this at the end of the month, I like the chances.
Yeah, I think that they go into, with the disparity of schedule, I mean, you just broke it down. I think they go into the Brewers series pretty much neck and neck, pretty much even. And then if the Cubs can win that series, they're in first place. And so the question is, scale of 1 to 10, when the clock turns to September, when the calendar turns, I think the Cubs are in first place. I give this a 9. I think they have a great opportunity as long as, I'll give it to Brian Kelly here. As long as you win the games you're supposed to win, I think the Cubs are going to be in first place come September. And if you would have told me that on September 1st, the Cubs are going to be in first place of the division, and you'd have told me that back in like April, early May, I'd have been like, not a chance. There's like scale of 1 to 10, -57. Like there's no way that is ever going to happen. here we are. I mean, they're just winning series after series after series, and they're slowly making ground up. I mean, they're right in the thick of the wild card race. They could be winning the division by the end of the month. It's a good feeling, Jesse. It's a good feeling.
I think I shared this with you at the beginning of the season. I placed a lofty bet on the Cubs to have 80 wins this season.
Ooh,
and when
right.
when the like 2 weeks before the deadline, when they were nearing kind of like 7, 8, 9 games below 500, I was like, man, this is going to be brutal, right? Like, I'm just going to watch this money incinerate. But there has been a resurgence, and I mean, they're at what, like 62, 63 wins. They just put it like this: they are ahead of pace at this moment for that 80-game landmark. So, while I am obviously, of course, rooting for them to make the playoffs, as long as I get those 80 wins, I would say that's kind of
that's where you'll be happy.
I'm
personally.
first and foremost concerned with this season.
Fair enough. You got skin in the game, literally. So I get it. I get it, and I appreciate it. All right. I saw this on Twitter today, and I wanted to get your opinion. It made me think of you and your dad, and this would be great if he was here. This would be a perfect Friday rapid fire question, and I think I know which way he would go. I'm not sure which way you're going to go because I think you're a little young to be completely in love. But here's the question. This was I don't know why, but some Twitter person put this out there. Who are you building your offense around? Adrian Peterson or Emmitt Smith?
Okay, so this one was tough, right? Because you have to look at this in two ways. Adrian Peterson didn't have the luxury of playing with Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, and really the Dallas Cowboys that were really, really, really good, right? And so like Emmitt Smith, it just made his game a little bit easier. And
sure,
and still like that's not taking anything away from Emmitt. Emmitt was dominant player, right? Like he still put up godly rushing numbers, even with Troy Aikman. And maybe you could say, that's what made Troy Aikman is having someone like Emmitt Smith
didn't hurt
in the backfield, right? But you start looking at kind of overall numbers, right? And there's different kind of milestones, I guess you could say, of what it means to be a good running back. I first of all look at longevity, right? Emmitt Smith played 226 football games, which amounted to 15 years in the NFL as a running back. Adrian Peterson played 184 games, and that was a combined, let's see here, about 17 seasons. But towards the end there, it right. wasn't. He was a year here, a year there. Didn't really play many games. He had a year in Detroit where he played every game. He played in Arizona for 6 games. The bulk of his work, came obviously with Minnesota and Washington, and he fought, a little bit more injuries compared to Emmitt, and also, had some other stuff kind of going on there too. So longevity wise, I got to give it to Emmitt Smith, right? I just think he didn't have the injuries. He played longer, and he played longer consistently. And then you start looking at, okay, maybe what do those averages look like? Because that kind of can balance out, a guy who has maybe played a little bit more. Adrian Peterson averaged 129 yards a game. Emmitt Smith averaged 169 on the ground per game, right? So that's 40 more yards per game, and he's doing it and playing almost 40 to 50 more football games. And that's like 3 seasons itself right there that he played longer with a better average, right? And so then Emmitt Smith also has more total yards. He's got more touchdowns. I'm trying to eliminate bias here, but when you're talking of longevity and just overall stats and production, I'm still going with Emmitt Smith. It's just crazy what he did. And then you start looking, at the numbers too. Yeah. Like both guys made, one was an 8-time Pro Bowler. One was a 7-time Pro Bowler. One was a 4-time All-Pro. The other was a 4-time All-Pro. One had 3 Super Bowls. One had no Super Bowls. Both of them had an MVP, right? So it's like very equal in a lot of stuff. But again, for the longevity and production over both careers, you got to give me Emmitt Smith.
That's one heck of a breakdown,
Sorry,
actually.
I always go
No,
way
no,
too
no.
long.
You're good. That's exactly what we want here. Um, I I understand what you're saying. Emmitt Smith ran behind arguably the best offensive line ever,
Correct.
which definitely helped. Now, he wasn't behind that offensive line for all 15 years, but he was behind that offensive line for a good chunk of time. And the offense, obviously, that the Cowboys ran was pretty balanced, to be honest with you. They were able to throw the ball, they were able to do different things. Somebody said that he had Daryl Johnston road grading for him in front of him. Sure did. They didn't have the fullback when Adrian Peterson was playing in the NFL, really. Or at least it was going away for the most part, right? Adrian Peterson just ran in a different time, and it was just different than what Emmitt Smith did. Emmitt Smith ran in the 90s when it was all about running the football. And Adrian Peterson just did things differently. So they're two completely different types of backs, right? And
I'd say
so
Peterson is more of that home run back too.
yes. I mean, I'm trying to take my bias out of it as well because was not a Cowboy fan by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't like them very much. I hated that they kept winning all the time, that kind of a thing. And so, I I know this is blasphemous, and your dad might end our friendship here, and I totally get it, but like, I was never all that impressed with Emmitt Smith. Like, it just seemed like he was
There
running
it
through
is.
Grand Canyon size holes. You know what I mean? But he did it for a really long time, and there's something to be said for that, for sure. I mean, he did not get injured that often, and if he was, he played. So there's a lot to be said for that. Personally, I'm taking Adrian Peterson. Probably, honestly, it's probably because I remember watching him more than watching Emmitt Smith, and I remember being more impressed with Adrian Peterson, the way he ran the ball.
Right, and that was kind of
You
like
know,
again my counter for Adrian Peterson was that he did more with less. Emmitt
right,
Smith kind of had all of it. He had the mansion, he had the cars, he had all the nice things, and Adrian Peterson just kind of showed up and he was the nice thing, right? Like
right,
he made it. He's what made Minnesota even good relatively at the
relative.
time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yep, yep.
I think
So,
there's a lot to be said for that as well.
yeah, I don't think there's a wrong answer here, which is the fun of the question.
Yeah,
But
it all comes down to like what you prefer,
right,
in your
right.
players.
I do wonder how good Emmitt Smith would be in today's game. You know what I
Same.
mean? Yeah, but nobody's going to ever touch his rushing record. That is
I
just never
remember
going to
watching
happen.
that too. It was pretty cool watching that
Yeah.
live.
Oh no, I absolutely. But nobody's ever going to touch it because the emphasis on the run game just isn't what it used to be. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so he's always going to have
Exactly.
that record, which is awesome. Good for him. All right. This is an interesting one. This might take a second to explain. So there was a Pro Football Focus top 10 list that was put out today. It says Notre Dame versus Ohio State is the 10th biggest game according to the Pro Football Focus rankings. So here are the top 9 games. Number 1, Ohio State versus Michigan. Number 2, LSU, Florida State. Number 3, LSU, Alabama. Number 4, Michigan, Penn State. Number 5, Florida State, Clemson. Number 6, Penn State, Ohio State. Number 8. Wait. All right. Next on the list is I got lost track of the numbers. Georgia, Tennessee, then Texas, Alabama, Tennessee, Alabama, and then you get down to Ohio State, Notre Dame. Notre Dame, Clemson didn't make the list. Notre Dame, USC didn't make the list. So, do you buy or sell the Irish matchup as the 10th best?
I this is a big sell for me. And again, I try to eliminate bias as much as possible. Here's how I would say it, right? Out of all the games that you just mentioned there, I think that there are two games that are worthy of being ahead um, of Notre Dame, and that's Ohio State and Michigan and LSU and Alabama. I don't think LSU and Florida State is better than Ohio State Notre Dame. I don't
Mm,
think Michigan and Penn State is ahead of Ohio State Notre Dame. I definitely don't think Florida State and Clemson are ahead. Definitely don't think Penn State and Ohio State. Any Penn State game can just be thrown out the window.
seriously. How did
Georgia and
Penn State get on there
Tennessee.
twice? That's crazy.
I don't think Penn State and Tennessee being on there twice, throw both of those ones out.
Right.
Throw out the Florida State games. Florida State's not back. What have they shown? You know what I mean?
Like, they're on there twice.
That's what I mean. They're on there twice. Throw both of those ones out. I just, to me, again, there's two games that would be up there ahead of Notre Dame with all bias eliminated. LSU and Alabama, Ohio State and Michigan, just because of how polarizing those games are, especially how late in the season they are,
right,
and where both teams are usually at. Like, I get that. But I definitely think Notre Dame deserves a second spot on this list, and I would put the Notre Dame and USC game up there on this top 10 list somewhere as well.
See, I would put the Notre Dame Clemson game up above the Notre Dame USC game, but either way, all three of those games you could make an argument for being in the top 10. Now, you don't necessarily want to see Notre Dame 3 times in the top 10, and I totally get that, but you've got multiple teams on here twice, right? You've got Ohio State twice, you got Michigan twice, you got LSU twice, you got Florida State twice, you got Alabama thrice. 3 times for Alabama.
Tennessee twice.
Penn State twice. Really, now that I'm looking at it, every single team except for Texas and Georgia, the number 1 team in the country, they're all on there twice. So Georgia, Texas, Notre Dame are only on there once. Every other team is on there twice. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. It's one of those lists that just makes you go, Not sure about that one. Not sure about
Agreed.
That one. So yeah, I sell this one big time. There's no reason. And even Roger Dodger's like, why Penn State so much? People are enamored with Penn State for some reason.
I don't get it. It's the same thing every year.
I don't see it. I just yes, they recruit really, really well, but when are we all gonna just come around to the fact that James Franklin is not a very good game day coach?
When is Penn State going to beat Ohio State and Michigan in the same season? When are they going to win the thing,
Right. 100%. And they're never going to. I'm sorry. We'll see. I'm not a Penn State guy, and I don't think I ever will be, but that one's hard to fathom. All right. A couple more, then we'll get out of here. Buy or sell the fact that former Northwestern head coach Pat Fitzgerald is now volunteering at a local Chicagoland high school for the football season.
I actually think this is a good look, Vince, because when you're in some trouble, what's the best thing that you can do, right? You need to get out there and kind of get ahead of some negative publicity that's going on around your name. So what do? You start volunteering around, you start adding in, the fact that it's with children and stuff like that. It does something to get people's mind off of, all the bad stuff that's going on. And so I hope that he's doing it for the right reasons. I hope he's not just going out there because of, this is something he feels he needs to do. I hope that this is just something that he's genuinely passionate about and something that he's doing more so than just to clear his name. But I do think it's a step in the right direction and definitely something that's good for him.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. It's a buy for me for the simple fact that, look, I work in a high school. It's not like there was any crimes against children or like anything like that. I mean, his background check's going to come back just fine. And if you're a high school coach, why would you not want him on your staff to bounce ideas off of? And, yes, it's going to be a bit of a publicity stunt to a degree. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of like a head high school football coach. And I don't know if it's his kid plays on the team or whatever the case may be, but like if he called me up, it's like, hey, this is Pat Fitzgerald. I got a bunch of time on my hands. You want me to come give you guys a hand? You guys need a linebackers coach or something like that? I'd be like, yeah, here's a form I need you to fill out. We'll see you at practice at 3. Like, how do you say no to that? And so I agree with you. I hope he's not doing it just as a publicity stunt, but you know what? Sometimes that can ground you, kind of going back to the roots and going back to high school and all of that. And look, he's not hurting for money. And so volunteering his time at a local high school, I think could go a long way. So good for him. I will say that. Good for him. As long as he's doing it for the right reasons, but good for him. That's great. Because I don't think he's going to be hazing any high school kids. He's not the head coach. So I think we're going to be okay there. All right. Last one. And I know how much everybody loves ESPN on here. So this is why I picked this one. The Pat McAfee Show is going to debut on September 7th on ESPN, and it was announced today that that's when the show is going to debut. So first, are you a fan of the show? And second, will you be watching on September 7th at noon on the mothership?
So I am not. I can't claim myself as a fan. I've never really gotten into the Pat McAfee stuff, and that's not for anything. I just got a lot kind of going on, and I naturally just can't get around to everything, and that's kind of where the Pat McAfee lands for me, right? Like it's just I see him, I see his clips on Twitter, I see stuff here and there, and that's good, and I don't have anything against him. I just literally don't. When I'm working, I just listen to like jazz piano the whole time just to keep the brain flowing a little bit. But
there you go.
I am definitely going to tune in to his full-time show because I think that is something that would be entertaining. And again, I have enough interest to the point where I just want to see how it goes, right? And I know kind of what it's taken to get here, and it's a big process, and the big contract that he got. So I also want to see if it's going to be a flop potentially, right? Like how does it pan out?
Sure.
So I'm definitely interested, but I wouldn't say that I've had a lot like of attachment in the past.
I wouldn't say I'm a fan of the show. I never watched it. I never watched it live. Saw a lot of clips like you, right? Because I'm a fairly busy guy. I don't have time to sit down and watch like a sports talk show per se. So I saw a lot of his clips and things like that. It's definitely a turnoff for me personally that he was always interviewing Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers when he was with the Packers and when he was just being his crazy self and locking himself in a dark room and all of those different things. And like, it's
that's
just
what I do for fun.
Well, I mean, you guys are crazy. But propping up Aaron Rodgers was not my favorite deal. I love the fact that he used to be a kicker and he has now made a name for himself. I'm pretty impressed by that.
That's
not an easy thing to do. And so I give him a lot of respect for that. I will not be tuning in. It's at noon on a Thursday. And so I will not be tuning in.
Those are work hours.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Be doing a few other things during that time. But yeah, it's good for him. He signed a huge contract. It was like $85 million, something ridiculous. Like ESPN has that kind of money laying around, which is crazy. And I don't understand why it took him so long to get him on the air. Like if I was going to write that kind of check to him, I'd be like, okay, you start tomorrow. So you better get this thing moving.
Yeah.
Hey, Pat McAfee, I guess he's going to be on game day and do all of those things too. So, good for him. But September 7th, if anybody cares, Pat McAfee is going to be there. So, all right, Jess, we ran a little long, but that's okay because it's always flowing when it's you and me on IB Nation Sports Talk. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And remember, no Friday show tomorrow. We will be back on Monday for our normal week preview of the Navy game. We are finally going to be in game week, everybody. So make sure you tune in on Monday. But no Friday show. So you guys got your Fridays off. Go catch a high school football game. That's what I'm going to be doing, heading over to Valparaiso, the alma mater of Jeff Samardzija, by the way. It's where I'm going to be headed to watch a little football game, a little Valpo versus Penn. And so I'm going to have a good time. So make sure you guys tune in to the Friday Free For All mailbag tomorrow. That will be, I'm sure, a great time with, I'm assuming, Brian and Ryan. But in the meantime, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Go ahead and give us a 5-star review. Go ahead and rate us. Make sure you tell everybody how much you love Jesse Stiers as a co-host.
That's what I mean. I'm going to give a little sneak preview here, but next week's game week. You can expect a whiteboard at some point.
The whiteboard's coming out. How do you defend the triple option, Jesse? I'm already giving you your assignment. How are we going to defend the triple option? That's what I want to see.
Let's get it. I
believe Thursday is whiteboard day, right?
That is correct.
There you go, everybody. So make sure you check it out. So until then, until next week, until game week, ladies and gentlemen, that's Jesse. I'm Vince, and we will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.